What's going on, guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat here. Another recap for UFC Vegas 53. Marlon Chito Vera defeating Rob Font in the main event. 5-round war, super fun fight. Overall, a great fight card. It had its ups and downs. No cigar on me this week. Slight losing night, mostly because of one fighter in particular. But before we get to that, I wonder how this audio sounds. I've got myself a fancy microphone here, a nice new camera, so, I'm no longer turning my iPhone sideways and screaming into it, which is actually what I've been doing. So we'll see how this sounds. Hopefully it's even recording. We're going to do this in one take as usual and hope for the best. But like I said, one fighter in particular costing us big on the night, and that was my most confident pick, which was Andre Touchy-Feely to defeat Joe Anderson Brito. Unfortunately, those dreams were crushed early on. I think like 41 seconds officially on the time clock. He got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito. Got clipped by a very powerful punch. We knew that if Brito was going to win, it was probably going to be something explosive early, and followed up with some ground and pound shots and, mercifully stopped by the referee. So that was unfortunate. That was minus 2.75 units. I paid the cost of his minus 275 money line to win the unit back in return, but no such luck, and that really did cost me on the night. Earlier on in the night, I think it was the second fight, was the second most confident pick, Natan Levy, which, man, that made me sweat in the main event. He won the first 2 rounds pretty easily, gassed himself out with all the grappling against Mike Breeden. I mean, he was just ripping him, suplexing him against the cage, down to the mat, probably about like 6 to 8 times, in the first 2 rounds. Gassed himself out pretty badly, whereas like 30 to 40 seconds into round 3, he's already like looking up at the clock, wondering if he's going to survive. I thought Mike Breeden would finish him in round 3. I was, kind of yelling at my TV, hoping that wouldn't happen. And luckily, Natan Levy must have heard me because he was pretty nimble against the cage, avoiding the strikes of Mike Breeden. Mike Breeden tried to finish him, as anybody would, in round 3, gassed himself out, and he was in no better cardio shape. So Natan Levy kind of saw that, smelled blood in the water, and got a second or third wind of cardio in round 3. But probably stole the round, too, and won on all 3, rounds of that fight. So got the unit back on him. He was minus 180 as a favorite, and was looking a lot more than minus 180 before that round 3. But, just got to work on a couple things. Probably not go for the grappling that much and conserve some energy for later on in the fight. But he looked pretty good. Carlos Candelario was a plus 200 underdog that I picked. That fight, unfortunately, got scrapped the night before the fights or the morning of. Leaving our only underdog left as Johan on the money line, and I had a half a unit on his KO prop, and he gave pretty much a good account of himself against Gabe Green, pretty much the typical Johan that we would expect, where he kind of waits and chooses his punches, but landed them very, very flush, very, very powerfully. It's Gabe Green's chin just held up, and in round 2, Johan dropped him, I believe, pretty badly. I think that was round 2. Thought that might have cashed that knockout prop. Thought it might have cashed that plus 120 money line, but no such luck. Gabe Green survives. In typical Johan fashion, he gasses out after not finishing his opponent and got finished himself for the first time, his first official pro loss. So a good account of himself, but Gabe Green, proved his toughness. So we got to pay attention to that going forward. I do like Gabe Green as a fighter. I just thought Johan would have enough to put him away, and he almost did. So I don't regret that very much at all. Daniel da Silva, I thought would walk through for Francisco Figueiredo early. I bet the fight does not go to decision at minus 110. I thought that was a very mispriced prop. So I loaded up 2 units on that to win nearly 2 units in return. And that cashed very early, just not the way I thought it would. Francisco Figueiredo took advantage of Daniel da Silva taking him down, locked up a leg early, got the tap, and that was a very, very easy fight doesn't go to decision win there. So I'm so glad instead of picking a side, we picked the fight does not go to decision. I thought for a guy who, pretty much is a killer be killed fighter, that was a mispriced prop. So I loaded up on that. Hope you guys cash with me on that because that was about the easiest fight does not go to decision play you'll ever cash. Like a minute in, he's tapping. So the other time props I had on the props were Font, Vera in the main event. Over 2.5 and over 3.5. I did not have the fight goes to decision. I thought it was likely, but I didn't want to risk what would happen in rounds 4 and 5. And I would have been sweating that the way the fight played out and the amount of times I thought Marlon Vera had Rob Font out of there. But he did survive, and we cashed the over 2.5 and over 3.5. I didn't have much invested on that. Obviously, there was not going to be much return on investment at a minus 300, minus 220, price tag on those. But at the end of the day, I thought that they were very reliable, and they proved to be reliable time props. So we got a little bit of change back on that. Helped soften the blow of Andre Fili, letting us down in that fight. Still negative though, but after the Andre Fili fight directly after, I got a little bit of satisfaction because I did bet 1.6 units on Andre Arlovski to win. Like I said in the best bets video, I could not in good conscience make that a best bet, even though I thought Andre Arlovski had a very good shot of winning. But since he's 43, and he definitely looked 43, I could not make that a best bet and advise anybody tail me on that one. But sure enough, he comes through. Sure enough, he comes through with a split decision, and I want to talk about that a little bit because not only is it interesting when everybody sees a fight one way and the judges see it another, but I think we should start paying attention to why that happens, when that happens, and we're going to have Sal D'Amato and Douglas Crosby judging a lot more fights of ours, so we should probably, instead of just crying robbery, we should take a look and look at why. When I watched this fight, I clearly scored it. Jake Collier winning round 1 for sure. Round 2, I scored for Arlovski, and round 3, I honestly, personally, I'm not sure if I scored it for Arlovski, but I thought that he stole the round, and I'll explain a little bit of why. So round 1, obviously Jake Collier outlanded Andre Arlovski on the significant score count, right? He pushed him against the cage for about a minute or so. Was swinging those big knees into the thigh of Arlovski, staying active in the clinch so it didn't get broken up. He outlanded him on the feet. He was very aggressive, pushing Arlovski backward against the cage and moving forward the whole time. He looked decent, He did get countered a few times, but he was overall landing more, right, on the feet and against the cage. Gave him round 1. Round 2 is where it was a little bit iffy, where the significant strike count between the two guys was clearly... by the numbers and visually watching, it was equal, right? It looked like Arlovski was missing less, and it looked like Jake Collier was missing more, but they still landed about the same amount of strikes on each other. Arlovski would get a nice little inside combination and then get back out to kickboxing range. Jake Collier would catch him in a few of these spots, and every now and then he would land more. Arlovski seemed to be the more consistent striker, but Jake Collier had some decent spots as well. It wasn't until the very end of that round where it looked to me like Andre Arlovski stole it with it was like a 3, 4, or 5 punch combination at the end of the round, if memory serves me right, where Jake Collier ate every single punch. They were all very clean, all very effective, all very powerful. And I remember telling myself at that moment, I'm like, he just stole that round. Nothing else matters that happened in the fight. No clinch positions matter. Just by the optics, that looked to be the most defining sequence of the entire fight. So I thought it was 1-1 going in to the third round. Third round happens, and just optic-wise is why, not even scoring criteria, it just looked optic-wise like Andre Arlovski was going to win that round because he was light on his feet, hands up. He looked like he was fighting, whereas Jake Collier had his hands down by his side, huffing and puffing in between every single striking sequence. He was flat on his feet, literally lumbering around. And if you just freeze frame, one of those sequences where it's like he's got his hands down, his belly's hanging out, his mouth is open, and Andre Arlovski is standing there ripped, his hands are up, he's light on his feet, bouncing around. Not that that's how an MMA fight should be scored, but in a very, very close, razor-close fight where not much is happening, I mean, if the judges are texting or something, they look up and see that in between Sal D'Amato not paying attention to the scorecards whatsoever. I mean, he's going to look up and see Andre Arlovski winning the fight. I thought Andre Arlovski looked decent. He had probably beat him on the... I want to say he beat him on the metrics in round 3 as well, but that takedown at the end probably sealed the deal for Jake Collier to win the fight. Let's look at this now. Every single media member scored it for Jake Collier, either 2 or 3 rounds to 1. Douglas Crosby, Sal D'Amato both gave rounds 2 and 3 to Arlovski. Mike Bell gave all 3 rounds to Jake Collier. Statistics from the UFC website. Yeah, Jake Collier outlands him 5 strikes in round 1. He outlands him. No, round 3 was equal on the strike count, and Andre Arlovski beat him in round 2. It was just the control time and the takedown that would have edged it for Collier. So it's a razor close fight. In the future, obviously, I'm not going to bet on Arlovski probably anymore. I'm happy to have gotten out with his last stolen victory, perhaps. But I wouldn't bet on Jake Collier either, man. He gave me no reason to want him to win that fight. He looked like shit in round 3. Very slow. If a 43-year-old Arlovski can beat you in rounds 2 and 3, I don't see much future for him at heavyweight. So I don't know who they're going to give Arlovski next. Honestly, he's on a big streak, but he doesn't deserve anybody better than this level of competition. So whoever he fights next, Arlovski, I'll probably bet his opponent because unfortunately he's letting me down with his agility and his just will to win. But he knows how to win fights. You got to give him that. So lucky to get out with that. Saving grace of the night, soften the blow of Andre Fili dropping the ball. I'll be back on Tuesday for a full card breakdown for UFC 274. Very excited, been doing research here and there on that card for like 2 weeks now, so I've got some pretty good reads, some pretty good takes, and I'm just excited to see Charles Oliveira back in the cage. All right, I'll talk to you guys then. Let me know in the comments how you did on UFC Vegas 53. Hopefully you guys did better than I did personally, but we'll bounce back next week in a big way. All right, we'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.